Are we actually going to speak about the unspeakable in office hours? Well, not really. Today is the politics of technology, but we're not really talking about politics. This is really about how technology is impacting the way our politics affect us and the way that we affect our politics. So join us. It's going to be a great show. Hey ho, hi ho, hi everybody. I have two streams going to the same URL, and I even know why I have two streams, but I'm not sure how to stop. Oh, there, I can stop it here. Wait, can I stop it? I don't know if I know how to stop it. Huh. I don't know how to stop it. Oh, I do know how to stop it. Hold on. Okay. Beautiful. Hi everyone. We're still live. I had two streams going to the same URL, and that's totally my fault, and I apologize for that. Hi. I've said hi now 3 times. Hi. I feel like I'm just going in circles. Tamara, save me.
I'm supposed to save you?
I'm just going in circles.
We are in trouble if I'm saving you.
How are you, Tamara?
I am good. How are you, sir?
I'm doing really, really well. Thank you. I'm so glad to have you here.
Good to be here.
I'm also really glad to have my friend Tony here. Hello, sir.
Hello, David. I'm happy to be here as well.
Is that a computer sitting in front of you that we see? Is that a fancy schmancy MacBook that I see right behind your microphone?
Yes, it is.
Nice. Is that
you're not supposed to see it though.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What am I doing?
I don't know. I like
That's
it.
okay.
Don't change a thing. You look gorgeous.
So
You're beautiful.
Yes, so it's a MacBook. It's actually I have my 4 ATEM mini ports are all connected with a computer.
Wow.
And so there is a computer in each one. So 2 of them are conversation with Tony mobile computers.
Tony is the non-technical. You know, he's the guy who claims he needs help to set things up, and he's got 4 computers running into an ATEM mini.
He started as a non-technical. That man has learned so much stuff so fast.
So fast. That amazing voice
and he left,
is the voice
he
of
left us
Lois.
all in the dust. And I'm Dusty Lois.
Lois, how are you?
I'm okay. It's going to be hot here, though. 93 today, 103 tomorrow, 100 the next day. Then it comes back to normal. But we have a little mini.
Come down to Florida, then complain about your heat.
Oh, I'm not complaining.
Okay.
I like it warm.
There you go. And look who it is with his pencils and his pens. That is and ruler. That's a fancy collection you got there, Sky.
That's a mini microphone.
Back when I was a child, this was the computer of the day.
And a
Just
compass.
saying.
That's right. And a slide ruler.
And my dad taught me, because he grew up on the farm in Kansas, if you can't fix it with a pop bottle and baling wire, it cannot be fixed.
Do you
and
remember?
now we have duct tape.
Gaffer's tape, right? Do you remember those
duct
rulers?
tape, yeah.
Those rulers that they would fold multiple times. No, they like.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
those were
the
so much
best.
fun.
You know,
I have one in my shelf over there.
Do you? Because someone in my office has one, and just for nostalgia's sake, and I love just opening it and closing it. It feels so good. Oh, I love it.
You know, and it's so precise. I mean,
Yes.
you would think that, it's got to be really sloppy, but no, no.
It gets the job done.
But I still don't know why we haven't gone metric. Just saying.
You know what? I'm so glad we haven't got, because I do not know metric. I just don't.
You would learn. We would
so
all
easy.
learn if we had to.
We'd all have to.
And we're
learn.
missing David. What we have this empty.
David.
I mean, yes.
is
Where's
not
David?
feeling great.
Oh,
So he's.
David.
we miss you, David.
We
We
love
miss
you,
you, David.
Bye.
We love
We
you, David.
saved Dave. Dave saved a space for you.
Yep,
Right.
we will say that space.
Face
at the
I
table.
should probably take that out, shouldn't I?
That's what I was thinking. Exactly what I was
Sorry.
thinking.
That's
Aw.
Well, you know, we could,
it's like the
we
chair.
could
It's like
do-
Elijah's chair at the Passover Seder.
What we could do is what we do on the Zoom Test Kitchen is call out to someone out there to come and join us. Andy, are you listening to this?
Come join us. We're alone, and we have news to talk about. Oh my.
Yeah.
So this week's news, there's always a lot, but the stuff that jumped out to me was all about Starlink, or at least the thing that jumped out to me, and then someone else put another story about Starlink in. Starlink, for those of you who don't know, is one of Elon Musk's companies, and it is a system that uses satellites to give internet access. And in fact, they currently have a deal with, I think it's T-Mobile right now, where if you're a T-Mobile customer, you have, I don't know if it's paid or not, but you have access to Starlink. So in any case, this is not the greatest story about Starlink, though, because there is a program called BEAD, BEAD, the U.S. Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment Program. And the idea behind this program is to connect everyone, and we've talked about this before, to connect everyone to high-speed internet, mostly fiber-based internet. There are still dry zones in the country, in America, the richest country in the world, where it is very difficult for people to get quality, reliable internet access. And in a world where more and more the only way to access certain services is online, that is simply inaccessible. So the BEAD program, oh goodness, really? I'm getting a pop-up. It's because I've read this article 3 times already. So the BEAD program, the idea behind it is to give everyone access. Well, apparently that may stop, because back in March, a review of BEAD, the government said it was filled with burdensome regulations. He also pointed out that it has not actually done anything yet. Now, the people who work at BEAD say that that's actually intentional because there's a process they're going through, whatever. I don't really need to debate the project itself. But the answer that they've come up with to replace it is Starlink, which I've never used Starlink. I don't know. I can only speak from what I've heard. What I've heard is that it is not at all as reliable as fiber. It's not at all as reliable as high-speed grounded internet, not grounded, wired internet. So
It's also expensive, and it's controlled by someone who could turn it off in a second. I don't know if you remember what he did in Ukraine.
well, that's our second story.
They were using Starlink for military purposes, and the owner of Starlink just turned it off.
And
Right.
I think that's what I realize is the difference between a utility that is made for the public, a public utility, versus an individual or a corporate experience. And we saw that historically with the trains. We saw that historically with wood. So this is not a new, event in our people group history. It's just, it's the latest experience. So yeah, we all have choices. Is it a good system? I've seen our friends from Office Hours install that. We used it out on the desert when we did that rocket launch with John Preto.
That was pretty reliable.
And it was at the time, 4 years ago now, it was a way of connecting to the world through satellites. It was Las Vegas again.
From the desert.
From the desert that
which is really important.
didn't have
though.
cable.
I mean, because
Keep
ironically, you don't think about strong connectivity in the desert, but if you're using Starlink, that's actually the perfect place. That's where you're going to get the strongest connectivity. Right?
Yeah, I mean, doesn't it has to have space, right? Like it can't be obstructed by a lot of stuff.
Well, you have to have direct sight. So for the T-Mobile thing, at least, you have to be able to see. That's what they say, is you have to be able to see the sky. That's what they say. BEAD was established back in 2023. 2022. And it's a $42 billion program, $42.5 billion program. This is not a lot of money in government money. And again, it has not yet actually connected anyone. They say that at every step of the game, the states were like, whoa, slow down, slow down, slow down. But they've been laying the groundwork to connect people. They have a progress dashboard that 38 states have either begun or finished picking service providers. So they've done this work. I'm trying not to go down the Elon Musk rabbit hole because it would be easy to.
I don't think you have a choice.
Right.
I don't think you have a choice. And the reason I say that is because I don't think my sister-in-law would mind me telling this story. She lives in Middle Georgia, and where she lives, it is a medium income residents, mostly homeowners, but it is a part of the city in which she lives that is very diverse. In the same city, there are people who have 2 gigabytes up and down. In her neighborhood, they have something that is equivalent to 4G. She tried to, and her neighborhood is locked down so that no other provider can provide service in the same city where other parts of town have 2 gigs. She has something like 4G or whatever the equivalent is. She applied to get Starlink. She was turned down. There are deserts in the United States, digital deserts, and it is intentional to keep certain providers for certain communities, and it is intentional. So it's very difficult to have this kind of conversation about technology without getting really political. Right. And that's the unfortunate space that we're in.
No, look, you're not wrong. And I want to go back to what you were saying before, because in some ways that is, in many ways, the problem with Starlink is not Starlink. The problem with Starlink is who it's owned or controlled by, and the fact that it can be used as a cudgel or as a weapon. I just want to share one thing, Lois, then I'll come right over to you. So you mentioned back, at the height of the, it wasn't the height of the war. You could arguably say now the height of the war because of the way Ukraine's being attacked. But just recently, back in February of this year, was this you, Sky, who put this in the show notes? I don't know who. Yeah, that U.S. negotiators were pressing Kyiv for access to Ukraine's critical minerals, and there is a news story. It has not been confirmed by Musk or his team that they were told that Ukraine was told that if they do not reach a deal on critical minerals, that it faced imminent shutoff of the service. Ukraine runs on Starlink. They consider it their North Star, said the source. Losing Starlink would be a massive blow. Go ahead, Lois.
So it used to be that when we had a utility that was administered by the government, I felt much more comfortable with things than a private corporation because you never know if they're going to go out of business or not. But the US government, now that's stable, it's rock solid. It's not. And so I find this whole thing scary. But the Starlink thing, I think, is scarier.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure about when you said the government. I mean, the idea behind the BEAD program was, in many ways, to turn internet into a service like telephone that just everyone has access to. That's the whole point. My problem here is not government. In fact, this isn't about government at all. This is about a private company, one person who happens to be politically active, but I'm not sure that I mean, other than it doesn't bother me. He's
BEAD?
Say again.
Who is turning off BEAD?
I don't know. I don't know if he's actually. I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, I think this comes down to, and I'm trying not to get so angry, but these kind of things do make me angry because this is something that everyone should just have. This should be something that we make our priority, and that is one of the things. And I feel like this speaks to a bigger problem that we have in government. And this isn't getting political on either side, but it is that we want government to be sexy and that we want things to be like so beautiful and easy to, and we want to put our money behind things that are quick returns and that have like a lot of, beautiful value. This is one of those things where you're talking about like running fiber to people's homes. Like it's not that sexy. It's not that interesting. And the people who are not benefiting are people who we don't want to help. And that is really what it comes down to. And it makes me angry. This is not something we should be sitting around going, should we do this? I don't know. It costs a lot of money. Let's try to outsource it to this. Like we should do it. We should do it. We should make it happen right away. It shouldn't take 3 years. It should be, we do it.
Yeah.
And I get really angry because when you look at the places that don't have it, we're not talking about, we're not talking about people who are in higher upper class areas. We are talking about very specific things. And it makes me so mad.
Yeah. Sky, go ahead.
It should just happen.
Yep.
Well, and to Tamara's point, sexy sells. And easy is what we are now accustomed to. We have become complacent and compliant because we have so many free services, which are not free. We are subscribing. This experience here is probably costing me, effectively, it's costing me something. This hardware that I have, the internet section that I have, the Wi-Fi that I'm using. Again, we have falsified what is free. But where I really wanted to go, Tamara, you lit me up. Thank you. But the thought I had in the early days of COVID here at my people group gathering on Sunday mornings was we needed to broadcast live. And fortunately, an engineer came in and said, look, we can give you a right now solution. And this is back to Tony's question, or do you want a right solution? And I think because sexy sells, the right now, the immediacy is what is being is appealing. We don't want to think about the problem. We don't want to work hard to fix it. We want it right now versus the right solution.
I'd be fine if we said we're going to do this right now because we have this available while we are doing something more long term. All for that.
Yeah.
Be like, hey, we'll make a contract with you to provide this to people who don't have it right now while we are in the process of making this long-term change because it's just taking too long.
Right.
All for that.
Let me play devil's advocate. I mean, is there something to be said for the world is going wireless and
oh yeah.
And the future is not in laying cable and digging up the ground and having things hanging over the streets. The future is in wireless. Is there something to that?
And transactions, Asia's been using their iPhone for mobile device to pay things for almost
everything.
a decade.
Yeah.
So the fact that part of the infrastructure that we use is in fact wires in the ground or overhead or wherever it is, that is not a bad thing because it gives us redundancy. It gives us a second chance if something goes wrong. It gives us stability. So I know I'm old fashioned, but I like belts and suspenders. I like that.
Right. No, I don't. Look, I don't think you're wrong. John is coming in with a comment. Is this going to work? Oh no, it's not going to work. Sorry, John. I'm gonna read your comment. I just can't put it on screen. The purpose of utilities is to subsidize the infrastructure projects by enabling controlled monopolies in the private sector that also protect citizens from the negative aspects of monopolies. In other words, the purpose of utilities is to not allow people like Elon Musk to have a monopoly and be able to say to Ukraine, we're going to cut off your internet if you don't do X, Y, or Z. Right? If the state provides
Ukraine,
it.
how about Mississippi? How about
right?
Georgia?
No. I'm saying over here, right, and over here, right? If the state, if the country provides it as a utility, then it's in some ways it's protected from that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Used to be.
Used to be.
Used to be. You know what? I'm too old for all of this.
Help?
I'm not a digital native. I'm old, and all of this newfangled technology stuff, I'm pretty good at it, but it will never come as naturally to me as it does to my daughters. And so I don't know. I mean, are the five of us, like how crazy is it the five of us are on here talking about technology? Look at us. This is this ragtag group of folks who remember rulers that you have to unfold. Like that's what we're talking about. Unfoldable rulers.
So I push back against your assertion though.
Okay.
Because there's a big difference between digital natives and people who understand the technology. And the truth of the matter is there's a lot of studies that are coming out now that say the current generation of kids, and I see it in my high school students as early as 2014, but now those kids are in college and in their beginning of their jobs. The Gen Z kids and Gen Alpha they're not technically savvy, even though they're digital natives. They have had one technology in their entire life, which is the iPhone. And there isn't much different from one version to the next version. So there are things they can do like TikTok and things that are useful to them, but there's very little motivation, interest, or ability to go and do what it takes to learn a new technology, which is to be bad at it. You have to be bad at it so that you can get better. And we're willing to do that. Like all of us are willing to go, you know what? Totally willing to fail to figure out if it works.
We're all willing to be bad.
And
Lois,
go ahead.
I
don't remember where in my youth, you had reading, writing, and arithmetic. We did not have social emotional, as a component. But now that is one of the R's of the 3 R's.
Yeah, I would argue that's the most important.
Writing does not begin with an R, by the way.
Yeah,
writing, I agree with that.
Yeah, social emotional is actually the most important. Lois, go ahead.
Okay, so when my mom turned 80, now before then, my brother and I, every time we'd get a new computer, we'd say to the folks, "Hey, do you want a computer? It's perfectly fine. We just got a new one." And they go, "No, no, no." So I think it was Thanksgiving dinner. Sometime we were eating it with my mom, and she said to me, "You know that Clinton, he's got email, and that Gingrich, he's got email. So you get me a computer and you teach me how to do that email." My mom was a firebrand. But, so I did. And my mom had been a school teacher. There you go. She is, a very intelligent person. And what I discovered as I was teaching her and then all the other seniors in the area who had left their jobs before computers were normal. And so there was that whole cadre of people who had retired without computer use. And so I started teaching computers. And what I discovered is my grandmother's generation and my mother's, if they weren't teachers and keeping and learning, were mechanical uh, things. You have a fulcrum, you push this in, and that one goes up. I mean, you do this and that happens. It's very, very linear, mechanical, that sort of thing. That's how they learned. And trying to teach them a computer was really, really tough.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And then my generation, well, we were the flow chart folks. So we'd be over here and ask this question: if A, you do this; if B, you do that. And then you'd keep going, and eventually you'd be someplace else. You'd ask the same question: if A, you do this, and B, you do that. And so it was conditional. It depended upon where you were, what the answer was. Right and wrong, well, it's situational. Okay. And so that's the style of learning that I grew up with. And then there were the young kids, and they would learn by pushing buttons, and, and eventually something would happen that they liked. Okay, great. Now in my head, it would be, now I'd have to remember which buttons I pushed so I could repeat this series and get to this thing that I wanted. Not for them. They had no assumption that pushing the same buttons in the same order would lead to the same outcome. It was random. And so trying to have the grandkids teach the grandparents, it didn't work at all. But anyway, so I guess I'm taking a long way around to say that how you learn, it depends upon how you learned to learn when you were young, and whether or not you continued to learn as you got older. And so for me, I can do linear, I can do flow chart, and I'm not so good with random.
You know what I'll throw in here, and that is that it's a little more complicated than that, I think, because technology is changing so rapidly that forget the fact that we don't even know what to learn to be prepared for the future. What we learned last year or 2 years ago or 5 years ago, what we learned 5 years ago is almost no longer relevant. The way I work today is completely different. I'm still using a computer, I'm still using a screen, but the tools that I'm using and the way my workflow is really completely different than the way it was just 5 years ago. And so it's not just I learn best if I'm taught in the way that I learn best. It's you can't just we all grew up in you go to school, you learn, you graduate. You go to college, you learn, you graduate. That's not the world anymore. The world is you learn, then you learn again, then you learn some more, then you learn, and then you learn, right? It's just
that's been true for a while. That's been true for a while because in the early to mid 90s, we had a vast shift of how we did business. We moved into email as a thing. We moved into utilizing Microsoft Office. And I remember when I started at NBC, there were a million classes we could take on how to do that. They don't even offer those classes anymore. They assume people know how to do it. So I think that there's always a giant technology. And if you go back and you look at how the internet from April of 1994, when we got hypertext, to even just between 94 and 2000, it was multiplying itself by 2000% every quarter. And we're seeing that now with AI and acting like it's different, but it is similar. Like my college class was in DOS. And I was going to work every day at TV Guide and using Windows. And I was like, this is not relevant. And I was failing computers because it was so foreign to me from what I was using in everyday life.
Right.
So I think that we just have a short memory. A big
That may
technology
be true.
happens
Yeah, you might be
every
right.
generation, and it vastly shifts how we learn. And the question is, should we keep teaching the same way we've been teaching?
Best class.
And we are not all the same. We are.
No, we're not. Of course not.
Technology is huge. There's lots of pieces. You know, I can have an iPhone and I can do these 3 things with it. You can have an iPhone and do those 20 things with it, and they don't overlap. And so what we are learning depends a lot on who we are, what our goals are, what we're trying to accomplish, and who we have around us that we can ask to teach us. Like Sky, he would be a good teacher.
Sky,
Yeah.
who's
Sky,
coming in
go
a
ahead.
bit.
Well, next week's topic or in the future, I do want to have our mind thinking about time warp in the world of internet and world of AI. Because last week I was fortunate enough to be sitting with Anthropic, the people that are also doing large language models, similar to their competitor, which they came from, which was OpenAI. And the head of the 7, or one of the 7 founders, was on the dais there and said, it's like being in a spaceship. The further you get away from the world, the time differentiation of who is getting older faster. I don't understand that. I need to go look up Neil deGrasse Tyson to explain this to me. But I think that he's at a point where he is recognizing, and he's in charge of a $60 billion company, and he's recognizing this time warp experience. And so I think time is affecting us, of change is happening faster than we are historically used to doing it. I remember when we went from a medium called VHS tapes to mini DV tapes, because all of a sudden we were doing HD and high definition. And at one point there was 2K, then we went to 4K, and there's all kinds of economic reasons that happened. But the change.
Did you always rewind your VHS tapes before returning them?
Oh, I have the best joke for that one. The best joke for that. My mother-in-law first took the first DVD back to Blockbuster, and she came back home, and she had been so conditioned and trained by the VHS. I said, "Did you rewind the DVD?" She goes, I'm such a horrible son-in-law. But again, that's the technology of a thing, right? We get trained by the technology to do a thing in a system. And this is my point that I tried to ramble shorter, but I didn't do a very good job.
No. It was great. Victor is
AI.
Yeah. Well, so Victor says we all have an innate curiosity. It needs to be encouraged and supported all throughout life. And Victor, that really resonated with me.
Me too.
We haven't really talked about it, but one of the projects that I'm working on is I'm opening a new school next year. It's a micro school for kindergarten through 2nd graders, and then 3rd through 5th graders. And we have 3 big ideas. And the very first one is curiosity. That we believe that teaching children and to ask really big questions, and to always be curious, and to always be challenging, and to always be wondering is really the only skill that we are positive of that they're going to need in whatever job they have in the future. So they're going to have to be able to learn something new. And so I'm right there with you. And Gary is saying that agentic AI is next. John, even TV Guide is a dated reference. God, I remember
It
TV
is.
Guide. I used to collect wasn't TV Guide. What were I forget.
Reader's Digest?
Yes. I used to collect
Those were
Reader's
TV Guide
Digest because I
size.
used to love the comedy they would write. Oh my gosh.
All
Reader's
those
Digest.
jokes.
I think I still have TV guides in my storage.
How else
Didn't
can
you
you
work with
how
TV
else
Guide
can
or
you
something,
relieve
Tamara?
yourself?
I worked for TV Guide Online, which was like the bastard stepchildren of TV Guide, because we came in, took over because we were the new thing. But it was an amazing gig for the time that I had it, because I got to go in and, look at old TV guides and the original covers and try to get them ready to go online, and that never happened. Like everything we did never happen.
Wow.
For a lot of reasons, but it was a pretty cool gig.
Amazing.
And I always said I would work for a magazine only if it was something like TV Guide, because I collected them as a 12-year-old. I loved it. So.
Yeah.
So, David, are you feeling better? I mean, you're still as old as you've been all before, but you've all learned stuff.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, I'm still.
This is a guy who made up an
I am
app.
feeling better. I'm feeling. You know what age gives me though? It gives me a certain amount of perspective that my younger friends don't necessarily have, and that helps me thinking about really challenging ideas like how technology is impacting politics and the role that it plays in politics. I think that for someone to look at the political landscape, the political world today, without an understanding of how politics used to work, the way that politicians used to be able to access their constituents, the way that we used to consume political information, what we used to expect from our politicians. Without that historical knowledge, I think you have a very warped view of politics today. So what I'm hoping we can do here is have a really rich discussion about this. And just because I know that politics is sort of a taboo thing in office hours, I want to be clear that this isn't about Republican, Democrat. I have no interest in having that. I mean, I do have an interest in having that debate, but not here. But this is really about for anyone and everyone who is involved in the political landscape and the political world, how has social media changed politics? How are politicians communicating? How are they responding to questions about digital privacy, political targeting? What is the role of AI in governmental efficiency, perhaps? And then, of course, there is a ton to talk about when it comes to misinformation, election integrity, things like that. So there's just a million different ways to approach this without it becoming political, if you will. And I'm going to throw it to Sky. Get us started.
Well, in 2008, I had the great privilege of working in just outside of Washington, D.C. at a post-production facility back when we were still doing broadcast and the internet hadn't quite taken over. YouTube was just beginning. And so we were still making commercials for regional broadcast cable companies for politicians. The bragging rights were that we were able to turn a commercial around within a day. And that was amazing that machine was in such a way that each body was in front of their machine. The writer, the man doing the person doing the capture with the camera, the candidate. And so we could turn a response commercial around in a day, which phenomenal. It would get and be out by that night. So that was 2008. 2010, I will also note that when we would use an image or a graphic, it would be fact checked. It would be made sure that it was legal. By 2010, I was still working in the political process. This was in Nashville. We were doing mostly senatorial races. The internet was much more accessible. The grabbing of any image that was available on the internet was done because they recognized that image was only going to be seen for like a blip of a second. It had the lifespan of a fruit fly. And that it was also so targeted in the broadcast market that they weren't really afraid of being sued for stealing an image. And so they would just grab whatever they wanted and they would throw it up there. And as the editor, I was just handed material. My job was to glue this stuff together for a 30-second spot telling about how bad Bob was versus working for the other side of the building. It was amazing how Bob could help you save your life and your mother. So this is this is my backstory of watching the ethics of material media and telling a story was all about, can you get your candidate elected? And again, if it bleeds, it leads. The negative is more emotional. And since you only have somebody's attention span for less than 3 seconds, you're of course going to lead with the bloody stuff, the hard hitting stuff. And maybe you talk about your own candidate, but it's better to talk about how bad the other one's. It's more of a threat. And we're in a fight or flight experience. This is what I'm seeing continuing on into now the social media broadcast of a candidate's ideals. So that's me going from analog to digital as far as how do you create content. And I believe the consultants are the real people with the hand upside the puppet.
Yeah, Lois, I'm gonna come to you. I just wanted to throw in though that what you just I've been paying quite a bit of attention to the type of digital tools and technologies that politicians are using to be successful. And so, for example, long form podcasts, the Joe Rogan type podcast, 3-hour podcasts, those have become really important to a lot of young folks. And those types of ways of communicating demand a really different skill set than politicians usually have. Politicians are great when they have a teleprompter or when they can answer questions, like 20 minutes, to be able to sit and have a conversation for 3 hours and not have a huge gaffe is really for anyone, I think, is really challenging. And yet we're seeing how even within digital technology, the types of digital technologies are changing and challenging politicians in new and exciting ways, I think.
And while there was a book about the selling of a president. In my short career in this, I've seen us go from people concerned about governance to popularity. And again,
right.
Yes, good point. Yeah, Lois, go ahead. Oh, we can't hear you, Lois.
Once again, we have a wide divergence of people in this country, and the politicians play to different groups in different places. Like Sky was saying, you make a recording of something that you want this community to hear you say, but this community wouldn't like you if you said it, so you make a different recording for them. And some politicians are really good at speaking out of two sides of their mouth. The technology which allows them to do that. If you're doing broadcasts, and you can have one here and one there. But if you are in a place where everybody can hear all of them, then there is some slight possibility of folks catching on that you're not honest. And maybe that might affect how things go for you. So technology Technology is used by politicians no matter what kind of technology it is at the time that they're running for office. And when it was newspaper ads, or when it was television ads, or now it's social media things, or it's a TikTok, whatever it is. So the technology is always there. Politicians will always use it. But sometimes we, the people, get a little benefit out of it.
But I'm curious what you think, because Sky said something and you said something that was really interesting. Sky was talking about how the ethics have changed, that morality of what we grab off of the internet because it's there. And now we are at the point where they're starting to do AI driven ads, which means that your one day to their 50 seconds is like, completely a different thing. But do you think that slow kind of changing of our own morality has also impacted what we're seeing now, where what you said, Lois, is like people might find out that someone's dishonest. People do find out they're dishonest and they vote anyways. So do you think that has like a long-term, our willingness to kind of stop fact checking and to just pull things because we know that they're not going to be seen. We know it's wrong, but it's okay because they're not going to be seen, is partly what has led us to a point where integrity doesn't matter as much.
Well, I think that, excuse me, I think that I'll come back and talk to you after I finish.
Sorry, I was muted. We'll talk over you. Don't worry about it. You're all good. As you were talking, I was thinking about ground news Do you all know about ground news? So ground news is, I'm not promoting this. I think it's interesting. So ground news is a site that it's a news site and it gives you the stories, but you can see on it, it sort of rates the coverage. So it gives you the story. It tells you, here's how many news sources are contributing to this. 71 of them are left leaning, 64 of them are right leaning, 95 of them are center leaning. And you can read the story from different perspectives. And then there's a bias. I mean, this is just fascinating. And this is something that when we had the Dan Rathers and the Walter Cronkites, we didn't need this because we had them telling us what was the news. Then we ended up, because in many ways, I think because of social media, we ended up all in our corners, and we listened only to that, and we're still there to a certain extent. But now we have technologies that can at the very least, if nothing else, open our eyes to the different perspectives. And I think that's important. Go ahead.
I do too,
Lois.
but you have to teach it then.
Yeah, right.
Because you have to want it. And I don't think a lot of people want it. I think they like getting news
That's very true.
That serves them. So I think we really have to double down in teaching younger people that you have a choice to listen to what you want to hear, or to be a critical thinker and to be able to evaluate stories for good, bad, and make your own decisions. I think that is something we have to direct instruct.
And sorry, Lois, I just have to say this one thing. And I think that technology can help us do that.
I agree.
Which is one of the ways that technology can be really impactful to our political lives. Yeah. Lois, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I got rid of that cough, thank goodness. So when Sky was talking about it in 2008, you carefully chose things that you had legal right to use, and 2010, it's off the internet, who cares? The difference, in my opinion, that happened around 2000, between 2000 and 2005, is that when we created the internet, we made it so that you, the viewer, cannot see the thing unless it's downloaded onto your computer, and then you can look at it. And that's the way the internet works. Okay. Well, what does that do to copyright? It blows it out of the window, because if you have to take a picture and publish it to yourself on your computer, then you are breaking the traditional copyright. And that idea that anything that you can see, you have the right to use is, I don't think it's a change in morality. I think it's a change in the rules that people are following. So I am a traditionalist. I am a photographer. I do not want to see my photos out there benefiting somebody else without my permission. But that's a very rare thing to say. But what I really want to get back to is we are talking about politics and technology. And I think we should just focus on the technology, because politics is going to be politics no matter what we do. Don't you think so, Scott?
My neighbor blessed me with that phrase that his dad told him, there's good politics and there's bad politics, but there's never no politics. And once you accept that as like, oh, okay, so then that's like many of these other issues that we're having, is rather than saying, well, that's not fair, or it shouldn't be that way. If we can get, yes, it's going to rain at some point. So again, I steal quotes from many good people, and including Alex Lindsay, plan for rain and be happy when the sun shines. So yes, these are tools that are helping change. And again, Tamara mentioned earlier about how rapidly things are changing. And I think that's why I was recognizing an ethical change in a value, Lois, to your point about if a photo in 2008 was sacrosanct because of tradition, And within 2 short years, because of technology, it was like, whatever. And so this is where, again, back to Tamara, now that we can a thing with Midjourney or recreate a pictorial image of something, technology is a tool, and how do we use it? And I think Tamara also mentioned about critical thinking, and that Dave, back to you. I think critical thinking, if that's what I'm pointing. Sorry, is that rude? Should I not point? Is that a thing? I know. I'm not a politician. I should be doing something like this. Anyway, the impact that you're going to have on a generation with your school, I believe that critical thinking is priority one. And I see Tony warming up. The mic came in. Now, what I really meant to say, Tony's going to put it in good words.
No, I'm struggling. I'll be transparent and say I'm struggling. And part of the reason I'm struggling is because, I was going back to Tamara and Sky's initial comment about the ethics of things. I think we're still there. I mean, we had this conversation several weeks ago, and it's still the thing that is, I think, sort of in our way in order to have us be our best self. And when I say that, I mean America. I just think that it gets in the way, and it seems as if I'm going to sort of go against the idea of good politics and bad politics from the standpoint that what is happening now is very different. And it's different because there is a genuine, for lack of a better word, meanness to some of the things that is going on. It's intentional to hurt. There is a desire to cause pain, to make people uncomfortable. Well, what does that have to do with technology? Technology is being used to thwart it. Now, I'll just give you a small example. So, I have a cellular provider. I'm not going to name the cellular provider. But when I have occasion to call for whatever reason, I get a bot. And this bot wants to resolve my issues or concern. But at this point, the bot does not have the capacity to resolve my issue. So it goes on and on and on and on to the point where it, whether intentional or unintentionally, you want to hang up, give up on your concern. And to me, that is intentional, because old people like me, when we want to get something resolved, we want to get it resolved. And if you are a bot and you cannot provide what I need, then please let me be allowed to actually talk with a person who can do that. But I believe that that's intentional. That's a barrier. That allows you to cut down on the workforce for people to respond to whatever your needs are. And so that's just a small example. And so you can use that illustration and go across the board in terms of a whole lot of different avenues and aspects. And we are just in a place where it's okay to be mean. It's okay to be disruptive. It's okay. We talked about in our earlier conversation tonight, we talked about Ukraine, but Starlink is doing some evil things. Let me rephrase that. Starlink is doing some very disruptive things in other places in the world. And it is I don't want to use the word stiff arming. Let me just say that
you're doing the dance very, very well.
Exactly.
Thank you. Well, I'm struggling.
Like only Tony can do.
Yes. No, you're doing the dance very, very well. Here's what I'd like to do, with your permission, Tony. I'd like to move away from intentionality, not because I don't agree with you, but because that, to me, that's a worthy of its own conversation. And I want to ask a different question. How do we feel about government using technology? How do we feel about the government adopting AI? How do we feel about our elected officials communicating with their constituents through TikTok? How do we feel about the government? This is maybe the biggest one. How do we feel about the government making policy about technology?
We've traditionally not done a very good job of making policy for technology. I was listening to Diary of a CEO with Simon Sinek was the guest, and he said something that I cannot stop thinking about.
I was listening to that. Sorry.
Cannot stop thinking about it.
It's fantastic. Wait, I just want people to hear this. It's Diary of a CEO on YouTube, is where I heard it, at least, with Simon Sinek. I had never seen that before. It was such a beautiful conversation.
It was an amazing conversation. Yeah. But the thing that I've been thinking about since I first saw it was he said, we didn't make policy regarding the internet. And we said, when the web became a thing, we really have to put guardrails. We really have to put guardrails. And we didn't. Decide we've ever been. We are like, in an emotional place. And we're looking at the same thing now with AI and saying, should we put guardrails or should we not put guardrails? And so I don't know that we've been the best, certainly in America, of putting guardrails on technology. And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if that's a right answer or not, but that conversation is amazing. You should all listen to it. But that particular thing really kind of stuck with me because I was like, that's so true. And I remember those conversations where people were like, well, we have to do this. And the response, even when you look at things like Facebook has been forever talking about charging money. And then people push back against that. And they now sell ads and sell your data. So are we better because we didn't have guardrails to begin with? Are we better that we allow certain companies or people to have monopolies in areas and we don't call them monopolies? So I don't know the answer to that, but it definitely got me to thinking about where we are and where we've been regarding those guardrails.
Yeah.
And policy.
Lois, you made a good point in the chat about where our focus has been. That's why, and I'm trying to shift it actually to, I think, where you were going. Do you want to pick that up?
So what I was thinking and wrote is that so far in our discussion tonight, we've been talking about getting elected. We've been talking about the way politicians use technology to further themselves and get themselves elected. What we haven't talked about yet, and I'm glad you're switching that, is how is technology changing how people act once they've been elected, when they're in there to run the government. I think that we have a lot of problems because technology makes it so much easier to lie to manipulate, to put out false information, to make people believe things that aren't true. I just saw an ad on my phone. I have games and I see these phones, and there was an ad on there, and there was Oprah Winfrey touting this new thing to lose weight dramatic. It wasn't her, but it had her face, it had her voice. I could tell it wasn't her. Well, not only from the way she looked, but from what she was promoting. But still, the better that gets at being real, the more trouble I think we as humans in our country are going to become.
So go ahead, Sky.
I have to step away. It's the top of the hour and I'm in my people group meeting and it's just getting exciting.
Sorry.
Come back next week.
Yeah, we'll have another.
So clean up the blood before you leave.
You got it. Bye, Sky. So,
Bless you all.
so Lois, let me ask you a question then. Would you be in favor of, I mean, do you think it would be beneficial to say AI or those types of tools that can be used nefariously, as you were just describing, should be disallowed from?
So, do I think it would be a good idea to disallow them? Well, that's a nonsensical question because we can't disallow them. I mean, they exist. It's like saying we're going to disallow the internet. It already exists. We have to learn.
But how about in politics?
We could declare it.
How about in politics? Like, could we say to politicians, to people working in the government, that certain tools are off?
And only honest politicians would follow the rules, just like now.
Right.
But couldn't you do, like right now, we have to declare, a politician has to say that they approve an ad. Mm-hmm. They have to say all of these things that I have said, I
approve this ad.
I approve this ad. And the reason that we have that is so that we don't have people being able to say, nope, that ad was done by my campaign. That's not me.
Right, but anybody could now just auto-generate.
Right, but is there a way to require that you are declaring your use of AI? Yeah. I agree, we have a problem. Criminals are going to be criminals.
And those ads that say you have to say, I approve this ad, what if you don't? There is no one out there who is giving you any penalty if you don't follow the rules. And now the rules are being removed, changed, gone away. So I don't think it's worth it to try and set out a rule on something that's already in existence and that the bad people are going to ignore anyway.
So the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, is pushing for clear disclosures on AI-generated content. Whether that will pass, I don't know. Certain states are also pushing for that. And
what are the penalties? That's the real question. What happens if you don't follow the rules?
Right. And look, and Congress is debating that. They're debating, digital ad rules, disinformation safeguards. What should the follow through be if someone doesn't pay attention to that, doesn't listen to that? I think that, ironically, technology makes information much more ubiquitous and available, but it also puts a much greater onus on us to be discerning in what information we take in and believe. So yes, and with the digital deserts always in my mind, understanding that there is almost universal access to information, but just because you have more information does not mean that you have good information. And so you may have been able to tell Lois that wasn't Oprah. I guess
some people will.
Right. When I showed in the test kitchen last week, I showed a digital AI of myself that I had made using Zoom actually, and I thought it was awful. I mean, I thought it didn't look like it. And everyone said, for someone who doesn't know you, David, I could probably pass.
It'd be faked. Yeah.
Right. And I was shocked by that. But and it's one thing for me to have a terrible digital avatar. It's a whole other thing for elected officials to be using these technologies. One of the things we've been talking about. So, sorry, the reason we've been talking about this is that in Zoom clips, they've released this custom avatar. So you can now make a custom avatar of yourself or your boss or someone. And I've have struggled to really understand the use case for this. And what I have learned from the kitchen is that a CEO could have their assistant make this AI generated weekly message, and it could go out in the CEO's voice to the all hands meeting, and the CEO doesn't, they could type it up maybe, but they don't actually have to sit there for the filming because the AI content could do it. Politicians could do the same.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I always I wrote earlier on, like, technology has gotten us into this, but in a way it's going to get us out of it. The things that are really working, I think, right now are not as much those little short clips as they are those podcasts or people going on to TikTok and being like, "Hey, just left the chamber and I wanted to tell you what happened." And I think that is a very different that's a very different form of technology, because that is based on storytelling. And so really then the best storyteller wins. And so that, I think, is a thing that is, in a way, is a little more positive than what we're talking about, which are fake things being generated. It's requiring people to either be super good actors, which they're politicians, so maybe they are, but it's playing on a different set of rules. And that is what younger people are responding to, is they're responding to people being authentic sounding and genuine. And right now, AI does not sound authentic. And so I think that there is a shift happening.
I want to come back to the question of, which is related to this, of politicians making laws and about technology. They are there are AI working groups formed in both the Democratic and the Republican Party. There's the European Union even has an AI Act, a Digital Services Act. The privacy laws, the APRA, would let users control their data, opt out of targeted ads. There are the TikTok divestment bill. All of these laws and regulations and restrictions that politicians are making. And I don't want to debate whether they're good or not. The question that I have is, are politicians the right people to be making these laws, given how little they understand technology? The fact, I'll never forget, Tony, then I'll jump over to you. It was it Facebook? Someone once was questioning Mark Zuckerberg, I think. Something like, can you see what I'm doing on my computer? I mean, it's just a fundamental not understanding of how the internet works, or how Facebook works, or whatever the tool. I don't remember what the actual tool was. Should they be the ones making these laws? Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were talking about this, the issues that Alex often lifts up about professors talking about Zoom not being streaming meetings are not good, and there's low that is not a good thing. But these are people who haven't done it. They are just making assessments based on possibly polls that they're taking, or they are not the persons that are using it in an effective way. And so, I think it would be the same thing with, when we get a chance to watch certain content that is going on in Congress, and we hear certain questions that are asked, and we hear certain responses that are asked. Then, in certain instances, we know that one of the parties does not know much about the subject that they're talking about. And even when you are appointed to a particular position and you have no idea of how that particular thing works, that is sort of in line with this whole idea of how can people legislate things about technology and they don't know anything about it. It's difficult for them to be able to do that.
Right. And Tamara, I love what you wrote in the chat. Right? Should politicians be making the laws? Yes, that's their job. But it's our job to make sure that we are hiring these people, the politicians, who are capable of doing their job.
Right. We have to have more conversations around what the job entails now.
Right.
The job entails that you understand technology fully.
And that job has changed.
That job has changed. Yeah. So if you do not understand technology fully, you need to learn it so that your constituents know that you can handle the job. But we have to keep making the case for that the job now includes these things. And if you can't do these things, you are not capable of doing the job.
Yeah. Lois, go ahead.
But the other problem with that, if I could just say that the other problem with that
Tony.
is that
I always give you the last word, so hold on 1 second. Let me get Lois and then come back to you, Tony.
No, I want the last word. Tony should go first.
Oh, all right, Tony, you go first. I'm giving it to Lois today. Here we go.
I was just going to say that one of the problems that we also have is that we have politicians that refuse to leave office.
Right.
So because they refuse to leave office, then how do you get the people in office that know enough about the subject to be able to vote or legislate accordingly? That's all I want to say.
No, I agree with that too.
But John makes a really, really good point in the chat. Politicians can consult with experts. I don't know how to do most of what my employees do, but I can lead them. It's a really, really good point. It isn't about them necessarily I don't know how Zoom works. I don't get it. I could never code or do any of that, but I can speak the language. I have an appreciation for it. I have a basic understanding. We're talking about basic understanding of how things work, and I can lead the people who do have that information. So maybe it isn't, in this case, it may not be so much about the politicians understanding the technology. It's about making sure that they surround themselves with...
Right. And Tony's point is that people are interviewed and then they have absolute no idea of the basics of 40-year-old technology.
Right.
Those people are not consulting experts. They need to be, but they're not.
Absolutely. Yeah. Lois, over to you.
I want to take you back to 2000. Do you remember that election with the hanging chads and all this other stuff? Well, our job...
loved the hanging chads.
So our job here in the county, I was a volunteer election worker, and the county appointed a committee to study and decide what election device we were going to use, how we were going to ballot. And the reason we had to do that is that the idiots in Washington did not understand how these things worked, and they banned all devices which put holes in pieces of paper. I mean, our thing was the most secure system you could possibly have. And there were no hanging chads. There were no chads at all. And so, but no, these idiots in their wisdom banned it. And so we had to go to a less secure system for our county because we were forbidden to do it. So do I think politicians should make laws about stuff they don't know anything about? No. I think they should be required to learn about something before they make those decisions.
Yeah. This is a conversation I really First of all, thank you. I'm so glad that we had it, and there's so much more to say about this. We'll definitely come back to it. I'm a politics junkie. I love this stuff,
Me too.
but I also love being able to talk about it in such a way that it isn't political. We're analyzing the practice of politics and the impact of politics, and that's just, to me, that's very rich, because we don't have to like how political our world is, but it is, and it's vital that that we do our best to wrap our heads around it. So I'm grateful to all of you. I'm grateful to Sky. I'm grateful to John and Victor and Gary and Ron and everyone who's watching in the chat. Please keep coming back. It's so good to have you all here. Thank you for watching. We need a topic for next week. Any of you have any good ideas? I'm putting you on the spot. Lois, you're muted.
My God.
Sleeping?
Sleeping? Technology and sleeping.
Technology of sleeping. Ooh.
That might.
I don't know.
put
That's
everyone
what
to
I
sleep.
plan to be doing.
That might put everyone to sleep. I don't know. All right, we'll
could
work
put
on it.
everyone
If you have topic ideas, by the way, you could just hop over to the Discord, pop it in our Discord, or just send me an email or something. You can find it all at therundown.show. We'll have something juicy for next week. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Lois. Thank you, Tamara. Oh, wait, you
I
have
have an
something?
idea.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have something. I think you should reach out to Ken Jordan
He already
and
did.
have him come on.
He reached out to
talk.
me. He reached out to me, and I would love. Yes, I definitely want to have him on. Yeah.
I was talking about not AI, but his work in the media in the UK.
Oh, okay.
He can talk about how articles and things are directed in a particular way in order for a particular outcome.
Interesting. Interesting. Yes, Ken reached out to me. I was thrilled to hear from him, and I'd love to have him on. Love to have anyone on. Anyone wants to come on, just let me know. We'd love to have you. Thank you, Tamara. Thank you, Lois. Thank you, Tony. I appreciate you all. We will see you next week on The Rundown. Bye, everyone.